check 1 2. Mic check 1 2.
A breath of new air, it's here at last.
Mic check 1
The
2.
darkness is
1
fading,
2.
the shadows
Mic check
will
1 2.
pass. God's light is
Mic check 1 2.
we
1 2.
rise and declare the UPP brings a breath
Mic
of
check.
new air. For too long we've been struggling to breathe, victimization choking the hopes we weave, polarization tearing us apart. But the UPP brings a brand new start, a joy, a hope, sunshine when it's dark, a beacon of peace, an immortal spark. The air we need is clean and true. Accountability will see us through. With transparency, we'll light the way. Responsibility will guide each day. Breathe the air of change. It's fresh, it's free. From the new PP, for you and me. God has placed the sunshine in their hands to light the darkness of our fair land. Antigua and Barbuda, land of sun and sea. Let's rise as the sun with the UPP. No more unfair compromise, it's done. Bad governance fades like the setting sun. We'll build a nation strong and fair. With UPP, we have no fear that the Lord is on our side. He will strengthen and guide. But we must get up, stand and fight. Together we will win. Together we rise. No fear, no shame. The UPP will change the game. With every
Mic check 1 2.
a brighter day, God will guide us on our way. Ortega and Barbuda, lift your voice. It's time to unite. It's time to rejoice. With truth in our hearts and hope in our stride. With UPP and the strength of God will turn the tide. Breathe the air of change. It's fresh, it's free. From the UPP, for you and me.
Mic check.
God has placed the sunshine
Mic check 1 2.
to light the darkness of
Mic check 1 2.
Antigua and Barbuda.
Mic check 1 2.
This land is crying, Lord, we've had enough. Bad governance, bad leaders, it's been so rough. They sell our future, turn a blind eye to pain. The ABLP plays their wealthy games. They lie to the people time after time.
Mic check 1 2.
They got to go.
Mic check 1 2.
God for truth, it's a shame.
Mic check 1 2.
They got to
Mic check 1 2.
They got to go. They got to go. It's time for a change. UPP will lead the land to rearrange. Lift your mouth, bring the people first for sure. It's time to rise and reclaim what's ours. The country's in shambles. Oh, can't you see? They treat our homeland like a playground for the wealthy. They disregard our intellect. They take us for fools. But we know the truth. We see it through their rules. They fail the people again and again. They got to go. They got to go. Enough of their lies. We've reached the end. They got to go. They got to go. Stand for justice. Stand for peace. We're rising up. The lies will cease. No more games. No more neglect. We demand a government that respects. They got to go.
Mic check.
Turn their backs on the people's time. It's UPP who stands for the right. The people first will win this fight. They got to go. They got to go. It's time to make it so. They got to go. They got to go.
No, that's what I'm saying. Right, correct, Howard? Howard, that's correct?
It's time to make it so. They got to go. Let the people rise and take control.
Mic check.
This land is crying, Lord, we've
Our
had
phones are not silent or everything like that.
bad governance,
The volume turned down.
bad
So,
leaders.
okay.
It's been so rough. They sell our future, turn a blind eye to pain. The ABLP plays their wealthy games. They lie to the people time after time. They got to go, they got to go. Disregard for truth, it's a shameful crime. They got to go, they got to go, they got to go. It's time for a change. UPP will lead the land to rearrange. Lift them all, bring the people first for sure. It's time to rise and reclaim what's ours. Countries in shambles, oh, can't you see? And for peace, we're rising up, the lies will cease. No more games, no more neglect. We demand a government that respects. They got to go. It's time for a change. UPP will lead the land to rearrange. Oh, bring the people first for
good evening, everyone. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the United Progressive Party's Town Hall meeting, which is being held here at Antigua and Barbuda's Workers' Union Conference Center. Well, we all know it as Freedom Hall. A special welcome to those who are listening to us online or via Progressive 107.3 FM. And would addly shout out, of course, to our friends, family, and supporters within the diaspora. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome you all to what will be a very informative and interactive town hall where the facts will be presented to you, unblemished, untarnished, untwisted, and unredacted. Two critical matters will be discussed here tonight. The first matter being the use of $75 million of our Social Security money, and the second being in excess of $225 million per year is being spent since, as we know of, 2017 with absolutely no authorization. And Antiguans and Barbudans, this is our money, so this is very important to us. We have three experts here who are very knowledgeable individuals in the field that they will be presenting this information to you this evening. And before I introduce this esteemed panel, this very qualified panel, I want to extend apologies on behalf of the political leader, the Honorable Jamal Pringle. He apologizes for his absence, for not being able to be present. He's unavoidably away. First, he was representing Antigua and Barbuda at the OECS Assembly in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and then thereafter, he's away on party matters. However, he is in-tuned and locked in via the World Wide Web. It is now my pleasure, without further ado, to introduce the members of the panel for this evening's town hall. Now, first with us, we have someone who is no stranger to us here in Antigua and Barbuda and within the United Progressive Party. We have the Honorable Harold Lovell, attorney at law. Yes. He's an attorney at law. He's he's the former Minister of Finance and the Economy, and he also lectured at the Center for Criminology and Socio-Legal Studies at the University of Toronto, Canada. He's a visiting professor there. So clearly, we see he's very much qualified and has the capacity to speak at this evening's event. Then next we have Mr. Everett Christian. And again, he is no stranger to those of us here. Mr. Everett Christian is the former chairman of the Social Security Board. He is the former project manager for revenue administration reform for the government of Antigua and Barbuda within the Ministry of Finance. He's a former country manager for the Antigua and Barbuda Investment Bank, and he's the former corporate relations manager at First Caribbean International Bank. So Mr. Everett Christian clearly has quite an extensive resume and very much, again, qualified to speak on these matters. And last, but definitely by no means least, the last member of our panel is the Honorable Sherfield Bowen. Now, you all know him very much as being the Member of Parliament for St. Philip South, and he will not let you forget. Oh, yes, we have some people from St. Philip South. Yes, yes, he won't let you forget it. Mr. Sherfield, Honorable Sherfield Bowen, is an attorney at law. He specializes in criminal law. He's also a legal specialist on taxation matters, banking law, and international practice. The Honorable Sherfield Bowen is also a trained and qualified in the state of Maryland as a certified public accountant since 1994. So again, another qualified, capable member on this panel this evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want us to get straight into the first part of our discussion. And as I said before, I want to remind you, this is an interactive town hall, so as the presentations are being made, as you see documents being referred to or video clips being played, please just take your notes, and when the time comes for you to ask your questions, you will have the questions there so you don't forget. And just before we get into the first part of our discussion, a few housekeeping matters. First and foremost, we want to remind you to put your phones on silent. Secondly, no flashes in your photography. If you're taking pictures, please ensure your flash is off. Thirdly, the aisle mic is for audience questions. The mic right here to my right, that will be to your left. That is for questions when question time comes. And please speak into the mic as you're asking your questions. And please limit yourself to just one question. And that question should be pertaining to the topic being discussed at that time. So we're reminding you one question and keep your questions to the topic being discussed at the time. So, having gotten those housekeeping matters out of the way, I want us to get straight into our first part of the discussion for tonight. And as you all would have seen and heard being advertised, that will be the proposed $75 million that the government will be using Social Security to invest into the redevelopment of the Jolly Beach Resort. And just before we start the discussion from our panelists, we have a few videos for you to play. The first video, I'll just give you a little few seconds synopsis of what the first video is. That's Mr. Maurice Merchant, the Director General.
Decided it's going to support.
Yes, apologies. That's Mr. Maurice Merchant, the Director General of Communications within the Office of the Prime Minister. This is him announcing the move by the government to use $75 million through Social Security to invest into the redevelopment of the Jolly Beach Resort. So, Mr. Merchant, you can turn your attention to the screen for those of you in person, and via streaming, it should be playing on the streaming platform as well.
Government decided it's going to support the Social Security scheme in a new way in an effort to strengthen the long-term viability of the scheme. The Cabinet approved a strategic investment in the redevelopment of the Jolly Beach Resort. As part of this initiative, the government will inject $75 million into the scheme, which will be directed towards transforming the Jolly Beach property into a 500-room resort. The development will also include the construction of a new section featuring condominiums, which will be sold under the Citizenship by Investment program. This means that the Social Security scheme will become the owners of the Jolly Beach Resort. This new policy is designed to diversify and enhance the investment portfolio of the Social Security scheme, as is done throughout the world by various governments, allowing it to generate sustainable revenue through both contributions and income-yielding investments. To facilitate this transformation, the government will also introduce amendments to the Social Security Act, enabling the scheme to restructure and actively participate in commercial ventures. The Cabinet has emphasized that the Jolly Beach Resort holds strategic significance for the tourism sector here, and the policy will ensure that the property's full refurbishment, expansion, and long-term profitability, reinforcing its role as a key contributor to the nation's economic development.
All right, there you have it, listeners and viewers. Mr. Maurice Merchant, the Director General of Communications within the Office of the Prime Minister, announcing the move by the government, this $75 million move. The next video we want to play is a video of the Honorable Gaston Brown, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. He is our Prime Minister. And he is here, again, just going into more details as to this investment by Social Security into Jolly Beach, and also blaming the United Progressive Party for, quote-unquote, the collapse, I believe it is, he called it, of Social Security. So you'll see our Prime Minister, the Honorable Gaston Brown, who's also Minister of Finance.
Here is well thought out, and that it will help to place Social Security on a sustainable footing, so that we don't have to, maybe in the next couple of years, go and make additional parametric changes, which obviously will not be sustainable. I don't know that we could go back to the people of Antigua and Barbuda to tell them that Social Security is insolvent and therefore we have to increase the premiums. I don't know that Antiguans and Barbudans would want to know that maybe a couple of years from now we go back to them and tell them, look, you know what, you can no longer retire at 65, you have to be 68 or 70. So if we don't allow Social Security to develop a sustainable investment portfolio, it will fail again. It failed before under the UPP. And which administration you think salvaged it? It's my administration, to the extent now that Social Security can meet all its obligations. And the same people who collapsed Social Security in 2010 when it was deemed to be insolvent is the same people who want to come and advise against things that we're doing to ensure the sustainability of the scheme.
Yes, the words straight from the horse's mouth, and just bear with us. I know it might be a little bit difficult, but we just have 2 more videos to play of the words straight from the horse's mouth. This next video will be, again, the Honorable Prime Minister Gaston Brown. Now, he will be stating in this video, the key point is that Social Security has $20 million in deposit. $20 million, and he's boasting that that's a very good thing. And this is him on his radio show, Saturday just gone, the Honorable Prime Minister Gaston Brown.
UPP did nothing, so they allowed Social Security the language. They had a lot of arrears in Social Security payments, and I notice nowadays, right, they're making up a lot of lies, saying that people are not being paid. In fact, I got an update up to a couple of days ago from the Director of Social Security, and all pension payments, all outstanding benefits have been paid up to about December, January of this year. So it's only people who would have recently qualified for the pensions, and those have been processed that have not been paid. So whereas we would have had some individuals who may have been waiting for a year or 2, we don't have that kind of backlog anymore. And I can say this too, it's not because Social Security doesn't have the money why they still have maybe about 5-6 months of arrears. It's the processing time and the sheer volume of people who would have to process on a monthly basis, the new people. In fact, Social Security now has over $20 million on deposit right now, compared to prior years in which they're hand to mouth. And I recall that even during COVID, for example, we had to supplement them. We had to pay even more than the $3 million a month premiums, because we didn't want, we had to do that so that they could meet the obligations to the beneficiaries.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and as I said, please just bear with us. It might be difficult. But the last one, the last clip to play from the Honorable Prime Minister, Gaston Brown, this is him again on his radio show last Saturday gone, and he would be saying two critical things we want to focus on in this next clip. Firstly, he says that the bond, there would have been a
Whereas
bond.
Jolly Beach failed to turn a profit for decades. Now that the government has taken over
give me a sec.
the
We have a
ownership,
little bit of technical
and we
difficulties
have
here.
the Rob Barrett group of companies operating it on our behalf. The company is now turning a profit. The hotel is turning a profit. So last year it made a profit of $4 million, even in its dilapidated state. We've been advised that if we spend about $20 million to upgrade it, to improve the rooms, the electricals and so on, and to ensure that we have better internet capacity within the rooms and so on, that we can literally increase the rate. So it means that whereas it's making 1.5 million US now, $4 million a year, that can get up possibly within the short term, within 12 to 18 months, to possibly about 3 million US a year. That's 8 million EC. So we're not seeking to give Social Security a non-performing asset. As it stands now, it is performing. The property comprises 27 acres of beach property at Jolly Beach. It is one of the finest beaches in the world. It has been voted as one of the finest beaches in the world. And if Social Securities get an opportunity to replace a portion of a bond that was actually issued by Harold Lovell and the UPP when he was finance minister, I think it was $330 million, a bond in which they never paid a cent on it to Social Security, a bond that remains underperforming, a bond that cannot be liquidated because it will be considered to be a junk bond. And if we are replacing $67 million of value by giving Social Security let's say, beautiful piece of real estate, so that they can substitute it for $67 million of that junk bond, how could Harold Lovell reasonably argue to anyone that Social Security be worse off when they have this bond that he himself, when he was finance minister, when he went into the IMF program, they said to him that he had to consolidate those debts and to regularize them. And you know what the interest is on that loan? I think it started as about 0 and then eventually stepped up to about 3%. So even the 1.5 million US to 4 million EC that Jolly Beach is currently generating would yield more than the 1.5–2% interest on the bond that Harold Lovell issued when he was finance minister.
Yes, thank you. I did not get a chance to give the synopsis before the video played. We had some technical difficulties there. But if those of us who know, which many of us do, a lot of what was said there was totally false, or we want to say misinformed to be more diplomatic. But the two main issues that we want to highlight for the audience, the panelists might take more things out of it, was one, the Minister of Finance, Honorable Prime Minister, said that the United Progressive Party did not pay anything on that $330 million bond. We want the panelists to at least answer if that is true. And the second thing that we want to mention and highlight is that the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Prime Minister, said that the profits, the 1.5 million US dollars, 1.5 million US dollar profits, that's 4 million EC, thereabouts, that Jolly Beach is turning over, according to them, is more than the interest payments on that $330 million bond. That is totally false. That information is available in the budgets online. Minimum, the interest on that $330 million bond, listeners and viewers, is over $6 million. So clearly, that's a false piece of information. But our panelists will get into this and even highlight more things. First, to present to us, to speak to us, and remember to take your notes, you can ask questions, will be the Honorable Harold Lovell, the former Minister of Finance, Attorney at Law, and visiting professor. And he will be talking about three main things. One, how did we get here? The history of the subject matter as it relates to Social Security. Two, the Social Security Act, which, by the way, we must be proud of our history, was passed under the PLM administration. We must be proud of those things, the PLM administration. He'll be dealing with that act. And thirdly, he'll be also touching on the merits of this investment that Social Security will be taking into the Jolly Beach resort. So without further ado, please welcome our first presenter and panelist, the Honorable Harold Lovell.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you and good night, Brother Wenner. I want to say to everyone here, it's a real pleasure to see everyone. Everybody all right? Yes. Everybody all right? Yes. No, we're sounding good. Okay, I want to begin tonight by asking the question, how did we get here? There's a fact sheet that was prepared many years ago, but which reflects what happened in the period leading up to when the UPP took office. But let us first understand that the Social Security Fund was created, as Brother Wenner pointed out, in 1973 under the Progressive Labor Movement administration. It was an act of parliament passed in 1972, but they actually opened their doors for business in April of 1973. At that time, what Antigua and Barbuda had was known as a poor relief system. The V.C. Byrd administration, before that particular period when the PLM was elected, they had spoken about introducing a National Provident Fund, but it never actually got off the ground. And it was the PLM that came in who introduced the Social Security scheme. And the whole purpose of the Social Security scheme was so that we would look after persons who are bereaved through the various benefits. The main item was the pensions for retired persons, but there was also sickness benefit, maternity benefit, and all the other benefits which previously were non-existent. And the system that operated before, as I said, was a poor relief system where you had to show that you were really, really down and out for you to get any form of assistance. So the Social Security scheme was a great progressive step forward for the working people of Antigua and Barbuda. Now, the fund, as I indicated, came into being in 1973. And for the first 3 years up to 1976, it operated very well, very smoothly, no problems. All the payments were made, and they respected the duties that were given to them. And so the board operated the fund in a very responsible way, so much so that in 1976, leading up to the general elections, there were persons who were calling on the then Premier, George Walter, to use the money that was in the Social Security Fund. And to the credit of George Walter, also persons like Robert Hall and others, they said, no, these are trust funds and we cannot use them for electioneering purposes. And so the money stayed there. Now, just by way of a footnote, the first director, executive director of Social Security was actually the father of Brother Bruce Goodwin, Mr. George Goodwin Sr. He was actually the first director of Social Security. But anyway, after 1976, when the government changed, one of the first things they did was to abolish personal income tax. And once they abolished personal income tax, then obviously there was a shortfall in revenue. But there was no plan in place to deal with the shortfall. So guess what? Social Security was sitting there like a fat calf, ready to be slaughtered. No respect for the future, looking only at the immediate. And in order to fill the gap that was created by the abolition of personal income tax, they started to dip into Social Security by not paying in the contributions, taking the money out of the money of the employees, but not paying it in, holding on to it, and then borrowing on top of that. So if you can address what's on the screen, you will get a brief view of how things worked out. Oh dear. Okay, well, let me tell you anyway. Between 1979 to 2003, the amount in contribution arrears was $204 million, 237,000. Loans between 1976 to 2003, 27 million in direct loans. Arrears on loans, 30 million. Development bonds and treasury bills, which were never paid, 94 million. Arrears on bonds and treasury bills, 106 million. and advances for various miscellaneous purposes, 833,000, coming to a total of $215,239. That's what the Labour Party owed the Social Security scheme when the UPP came to office in 2004. Now, I want to compare that with the arrears from the UPP. Now, with the Labour Party, it was 464 million. The UPP, it was 81 million. And the reason why it was 81 million is because when we were elected in 2004, before we could make the necessary adjustments in order to stabilize the finances, there were arrears because we had to obviously continue the system that we met. But in a matter of years, we were able to introduce new measures, stabilize the finances of the country, and put the Social Security scheme on a clear path where payments could be made. Now, I want to go to the other page, which details contributions paid by government. Contributions paid by government. Go to that page, contributions paid by government. Now, in the 28 years that the Labour Party was in government, between 1976 and 2004, they paid in a total of $11,921,838. $11 million in 28 years. And I can tell you how that was broken up. In 1995, they transferred lands at Painters valued at $5 million. In 1996, they put in cash of $5 million. But the interesting thing is, as you will see, they borrowed from Social Security, and then of the money they borrowed from Social Security, they put back in $5 million as cash. And in 1997, again in cash, they put in $1 million. And so in 28 years, they put in a total of $11 million. I can say that for the period that the UPP was in government, we put in $122,770,268. So in our 10 years, we put in 10 times as much as what the Labour Party put in 28 years. Now, I find it important to explain this because we need to stop playing games as far as Social Security is concerned. People need to just know the facts. How did Social Security get into trouble? It got into trouble because for 28 years, contributions were not paid in. And because contributions were not paid in and money was taken out, it created a debt of $464,000 by $464 million by 2003. That's facts. The other thing that's a fact, it didn't happen anywhere else in the Caribbean. There is nowhere else in the Caribbean where this experience took place. You look at St. Kitts, you look at all the other islands, they have paid up their subscriptions. They have paid in their contributions. They have done what they have had to do so as not to place the Social Security fund, which we will see in a while, is a trust fund which you shouldn't play with. But you see, at that time, what was happening? Immediately after the Social Security scheme was established in 1973, you didn't have a lot of pensioners. I think when it started, you had about 37 pensioners. But even though you had 37 pensioners, the money was building up because it's really a future fund for the generations to come. But the Labour Party saw the money there and decided, we're going to use it up. That is where Social Security went down. Now, when we came into office, we sought to stabilize it. For the first few years, as I said, we had arrears, weren't able to pay in because we were continuing the system that we met whilst we went about changing it. Once we were able to put a number of things in place, I mean, it was a tough decision, but we introduced personal income tax. But once we introduced personal income tax, you had revenue coming in that you could stabilize the Social Security scheme with, which is what we did. Then, now, we came to 2010. In 2010, we decided, look, we're going to bring everything to book. Because all the money that had been borrowed by the Labour Party, some of it was very difficult to find. And so the technicians at Social Security and at the Ministry of Finance, they worked very, very hard, finding all the loans and all the advances and all the unpaid treasury bills and bonds, etc. And they put it all together and structured it in a bond. Now, this was an instrument that was sure, it was interest-bearing, and unlike what the Prime Minister is saying, that it was 0 to 2%. That's not true. The minimum was 2%, and it went up to 6%. So right now, it would have been yielding 6% if the government was actually paying on the bond. But I'm not going to go into the bond. Brother Sherfield is going to give us the details of that bond from 2010. But the point I wanted to make is that we need to understand the genesis of the problem. And the genesis of the problem is that for 28 years, the money was not paid in, and that completely destabilized it, so that by the time the years rolled on, you had more pensioners coming on stream, and the money was not there. And so, obviously, the scheme was in crisis. Now, an interesting thing that I want to point out here is that even though we're talking about the 464 million that was owed, this is something that we need to bear in mind. Now, in 2005, when they did an assessment, this is what was written. It has been 33 years since the inception of the fund, and the liquid investment portfolio, consisting of CDs, certificates of deposit, at local financial institutions, amounted to 45 million at December 31st, 2005. 45 million. I want to go on to show you something here. It says, it should be noted that if government had met its obligations fully, the portfolio would have, in all probability, amounted to slightly more than $1 billion at the end of 2005. Interestingly, in 1973, when the fund was established and they brought in experts from England and the United Nations, they had a lot of technical assistance in setting up this thing. And in the consultation, the consultants at that time, in 1973, the fund's consultants projected that the investment fund would be approximately $1 billion by the year 2003. I want to just emphasize that. You see, you look at the amount of money that was not paid in and taken out. And so Social Security was not only starved of the money, but it was not invested. So that's investment lost. And what Social Security should have represented by 2003, if they had not done that, Social Security in 2003 would have been sitting on $1 billion according to how the system was designed. These are experts, you call actuarial scientists, people who know what they're doing, who know to project if all these payments are made. You look at the age of the various contributors, you look at the death rate, you look at how fast people are retiring. All of these things you take into account. And then you can project that even if it's not 1 billion, at least a 990,000, but a million, I'm so sorry. The point I'm making is what was stolen, because you have to put it that way, what the people were robbed of was the opportunity to have $1 billion sitting there so that pensioners could be taken care of, mothers could be taken care of, all those persons who are in need could be taken care of. That is something that we should not take lightly. The second thing I want to touch on from here, and by the way, the point I made about the government taking funds out was borne out by Mr. Max Harris. I don't know if you remember, he was on the radio. He himself admitted what had happened. I think we have his voice somewhere there. Okay, well, you have him?
Were not that had lots of money, and they deposited these monies in the banks, and they got 2 and 3% interest on them. They had these CDs all over in virtually every bank. So the government of Antigua and Barbuda borrowed, and to be quite frank, they didn't repay.
Okay. From the mouth of the man himself. So when people come and say, oh, UPP mash up Social Security and spin all these lies, instead of getting to grips with what the problems are and how we're going to make it sustainable, those lies I'm saying, I hope in the future we can just say to those people who peddle them, that is a plain, outright lie. Okay. Now, I want to deal with the question of the Social Security Act because that is very important. The Social Security Act establishes the Social Security Fund. And so in Section 3 of the Social Security Act, there is hereby established a fund to be called the Social Security Fund, hereinafter called the fund into which shall be paid contributions. All monies are paid into the fund. Section 4 says there shall be a board, and the purpose of this board is to watch the fund. And it's important to notice this, or to make a note of this, because the government treats it as though it's the government's money. But most of the money in the fund belongs to the private sector. Government is the single largest employer, but taken as a whole, the private sector puts more money into the fund than the government. And so the fund is specifically set up so that you have a board who are to manage this fund. And it is a trust fund, so the board members are trustees. And so they now are comprised of 2 from the government, 2 from the private sector, and 2 representing the unions. That is the board that currently manages the Social Security Board, the Social Security Fund. Now, let us be very clear. Because the board members are trustees, they have what's known as a fiduciary duty. Their duty is not to the government. Their duty is to the contributors and the beneficiaries. That is who the Act says they're to look out for. This is not government money. These are trust funds, and they're merely overlooking these trust funds. And so we have said, and I want to say again to the members of the board, I know many of them are listening, they must discharge their duty in a manner that is consistent with the Act. Now, part of the Social Security arrangement is that you must have an investment committee. That's Section 13 of the Act. You must have an investment committee. Now, it is that investment committee which is to make decisions regarding investments as far as Social Security is concerned. It is not for Mr. Maurice Merchant to come and make declarations about what is going to happen with Social Security money. That is the remit of the investment committee overseen by the Board of Trustees of Social Security. And so you find now that with their duty to the contributors and the beneficiaries, if they fail to discharge their duty adequately, they can be held liable for breach of trust. They can be held liable for breach of trust. And I want to now turn to what most people have been talking about, which has to do with the Jolly Beach proposal. Now, in the bond that we endorsed with the Social Security Board at the time, and which was approved by Parliament, we understand that you can repay the loan in cash to the interest, the 330 million interest-bearing section of the bond that we spoke about, and also with asset swaps. So we don't have an issue with that because we understand that concept. But if I'm going to give you an asset, let me give you an asset that can easily be turned liquid, money, cash. Because for 28 years, the fund having been starved of these funds, under ordinary circumstances, $1 million should have been sitting there. It's not there. $1 billion should have been sitting there. It's not there. So the main thing that Social Security needs is cash or assets that can quickly turn into cash. I've heard persons say that, all over the world, pension funds and Social Security funds are invested in private equity and venture capital. I don't know that that is true. And I want them to show me where that happens. Yes, you will find that in some situations, pension funds may be placed in one of these type of instruments, which may have a high interest-bearing attraction. But those are always short-term, maybe a 3 months or 6 months, and that's when you have a lot of money to play with. You decide, okay, you're going to risk a little bit. But when you are brimming on the edge of insolvency, when you can barely meet your expenses, then you have to be very careful what type of investments you're going to take on as Social Security. And this is where I want to come in now. Now I'm saying, first of all, this whole proposal about Jolly Beach is being conducted at a very low level of governance. Very, very low, very sloppy. Now here it is, first you have Mr. Maurice Merchant coming with an announcement. To this day, the government has not produced a piece of paper to say this is the plan. And so what they're doing, as they go along, they make it up. Maurice Merchant say one thing, then the Prime Minister come after people object, and he put in a little bit, then they leave out another piece when they come next time. They are making it up as they go along. If we're going to do this thing professionally, there should be some sort of valuation done on Jolly Beach. So you can say, I'm quoting from this report, the valuation placed on it is such and such. You can say, when you talk about the 1.5 million US profit, where you quoting that from? Where you get that from? And when you talk about Jolly Beach making 1.5 million profit, it made 1.5 million profit if that is the case, because they haven't told us where they got those figures from. Are they audited financial statements? Listen, Jolly Beach historically has been making a loss. Everybody knows that. I was speaking to somebody who does investments in these areas just within this week. I said, how would you describe it? They said, well, I would describe Jolly Beach as a whole. Why do they say it's a whole? When it was run by the Caribbean Hotel Management Company, they didn't turn a profit, and eventually they got out of it. It went over to ABI Group. ABI Group had in good, competent people. They couldn't pay APUA. They couldn't pay Social Security. They couldn't pay medical benefits. They couldn't pay education levy. They couldn't pay any of those statutory requirements. And what happened eventually? They owe so much money that the government could walk in and say, thank you very much. It was a complete loss maker, complete loss maker. Then they brought in Mr. Barrett. Now, one thing about Mr. Barrett, and I've said it before, he knows how to make money. But Sir Robert Barrett is perhaps one of the most outstanding hoteliers in the world. You don't have two more like him. Not only that, he has negotiating power. When he goes to London, when he goes to America and these places, he has contacts and networks, plus that he has other hotels. He has a network that he can make things happen. When you put this to Social Security, who is going to run it? Anytime you go to the bank to borrow money, call anything for a hotel, the first thing they want to know, who is going to be your operator? Once they cannot show that the person who's going to operate it is somebody who knows about these things, it's going to be very difficult to get it. But here is where I have a difficulty. I am saying, whilst we can understand that, okay, you give an asset and you say, okay, you now have an asset, whereas previously you didn't have an asset. But the point is, it's an asset that's not just going to be giving you money. Who carries the benefit also carries the burden. And so, whilst the 1.5 million might sweet you, what about what you're going to have to pay to maintain it? I say it is a poison chalice. It is a poison chalice. Outwardly, it looks attractive, but it is deceptively attractive. Because if, for any reason, this doesn't make a profit, who is going to have to shore it up? Is the contributors' money going to have to go in and shore it up? No, here is my issue again. In 2016, the government created NAMCO. The government created NAMCO, right? And in NAMCO, you look at their most recent returns that were filed at the company's registry. They are incorporated to purchase and acquire interest in real estate and other forms of property. The government set it up for that purpose. That is what NAMCO was doing. And I want you to understand here. NAMCO was established, they say, to take all the money from all the different statutory bodies that are making money. And then they to put that money now and risk it in venture capital. That's what it is. It's really a state-owned venture capital vehicle. It's incorporated so that they will invest in things like Jolly Beach. That's what they will do. But since NAMCO has been established, we have not seen any financial reports. We have not seen any form of accounts for NAMCO since 2016. Where's all this money? They have acquired, that's what it was set up for, to do all of these things. And now that they can't use NAMCO because NAMCO's money has probably been totally spent without them accounting to anybody for it. So now guess what? They look left, they look right, and guess what they see? Social Security. Look left, look right, guess what they see? Social Security. So they decide, okay, sweeten it up, make it sound nice, just like they did with the Painters Housing Project. When the government under the previous Labour Party administration had owed so much money, the then Minister of Finance, Johnny St. Louis, he said to them, we're going to give you some land, you're going to do this housing, people need housing, they set up the mortgage and trust, everything looks sweet, can't fail, sure shot, money satisfied, carry that to the bank. And guess what? They lost millions of dollars on that, on a project that looked like it can't fail, ready market, people want housing, financing available, national mortgage and trust, everything looked perfect, end up losing millions of dollars. Look, if you put aside money for your children's college fund, that's one set of money. You may have some other money that you may say, if anything comes along. Now, if somebody comes with an idea and tell you, look, I want you to come in business with me to do so and so, you're not going to touch your children's college fund because that is sacrosanct. You don't touch that. It's the same thing with Social Security. Do not place that at risk. I'm saying this is a high-risky venture. The government incorporated a body called NAMCO. NAMCO was there to take risk. Where is the money for NAMCO? What is the explanation why you are not using NAMCO? Why are you now going to burden the Social Security scheme and imperil future pensions, future payments for disability, future payments for maternity? Why are you going to place those at risk now when you have NAMCO there that you haven't accounted for? But my last word on this is the board are the ones who are to make this decision. I know for a fact the board have not seen any financial statements for the operator who's operating Jolly Beach. We hear about the 1.5 million US, but we don't hear about all the things that were given in order to make that money. Because when Sir Robert Barrett took it over, you remember the discussion, what's in the agreement? And we all know the government wanted to make it work, so they gave him a set of concessions. Is that the idea? To distort the market? To make some people run a hotel and don't pay a lot of the expenses and everybody else have to pay? Is that the idea? The board has not seen the any valuation of Jolly Beach. The board has not seen any valuation of Jolly Beach. They have not seen any financial statements for the operator. So how is the board now going to make an informed decision on any investment to do with Jolly Beach? The board has not seen any financial statements, audited financial statements for even Social Security. The office of the Leader of the Opposition has been trying to get proper accounts for Social Security. There are no audited financial accounts for a long time. They used to tell us what was going on at Social Security by having things online. Since 2019, you cannot get any information online on what is happening in Jolly Beach. So in other words, they're, Lord have mercy, Social Security. So in other words, they're hiding the information from you, making decisions that they have no power to make, and we're simply saying to those who are by law authorized to make those decisions, be wise, be careful, do the right thing, defend the contributors and the beneficiaries as is your fiduciary and statutory duty, and do not allow a government that does not understand how to run government tell you what to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Harold Lovell, former Minister of Finance and the Economy, attorney at law, and he's also a visiting professor at the University of Toronto. But just before you pack up most of your notes, sir, just one question from myself as a moderator. Because we heard some videos, for those of us who might have joined us late, either physically or virtually, of the Prime Minister speaking before he went into the discussion. And you raised the point of Sir Rob Barrett was an exceptional hotelier, and he was the one who was managing Jolly Beach Resort. And through his stewardship, they're claiming, we can't prove it, but they're claiming that Jolly Beach was turning over as profit $1.5 million US dollars, which is about 4 million EC dollars. Now you asked, with the departure, the death of Sir Rob Barrett, how can we be assured that this will continue? Now one might say, as we heard in the final video played, that the Prime Minister has said that the Barrett group of companies will continue to manage Jolly Beach Resort for the Social Security. So are you confident, Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Harold Lovell, that the Barrett group of companies will be able to continue turning over this unproven, this unverified profit?
Well, there are two things there. In the first place, the agreement, based on what we were told when Sir Robert Barrett took over the hotel, that it would run, I think, until either 2026 or 2027. I think it's 2026. So it's going to expire. He cannot say what they will do. He can say, I hope they do. But there's no way, if you have a management contract with somebody, that you can say from now that they will be the ones to do it, especially in the absence of Sir Robert Barrett. And that's the second point I want to make. When I say that Rob Barrett is somebody who knows how to make hotels work, it's just a fact. He runs hotels all over the Caribbean. He knows how to integrate them. He has an enormous marketing machine. He knows how to get good deals because he's well connected, connected in England, connected in all our major source markets. He's very well connected. This is not somebody who you just go down the road and pick up like that. I mean, whatever differences you have with Rob Barrett, he knows how to make money out of hotels. And the fact is because he drives hard bargains. And he drives hard bargains all over, whether it be with the tour operators, the travel agents, whoever he has to drive a hard bargain with, he'll drive a hard bargain. But you don't just pick up those people overnight. And that's my point. But in any event, this is not the brief for Social Security. Social Security is like your child's college fund.
Yes.
That if you want to put it anywhere, you safeguard those funds and you put those monies in safe instruments that you know are low risk and moderate return.
Yes. Thank you so much, Honorable Harold Lovell, for that explanation. So, yes, you can thank him. You can thank him. So the next panelist who will be presenting for us this evening, based on what we were discussing on this Social Security investment into Jolly Beach, $75 million investment, will be the Honorable Sherfield Bowen. Just to remind you, he is the Member of Parliament for St. Philip South. He's also an attorney at law, specializing in criminal law, and he is also trained and qualified accountant, certified public accountant in the state of Maryland since 1994. So he is uniquely, specifically qualified to address the matters before us this evening. And with that being said, let us welcome Brother Sherfield Bowen as he addresses the matters. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First and foremost, let me give some love to the people of St. Philip South. Thank you for your support. I am going to speak about the bond of $330 million, which was issued by the UPP government in their term of office when they came into office. And why was the bond issued? What are the terms of the bond and how the bond is to be paid? The bond was created by the UPP government because when they came to office, they met a state of many, many loans that the government owed to Social Security. These loans were not being paid. These monies belonged to Social Security. The Antigua Labour Party government had taken all these monies out of Social Security. And the UPP government said, let's put them together, concentrate them into one bond let us pay interest on the bond and start to pay back this money that we, the government, owe to Social Security. So the first, as you heard from my brother there, Social Security was created under the PLM government in 1972. It began to operate in 1973. During the period of the UPP government, not a single loan was ever borrowed from Social Security. Neither was any contribution owed. That government remained true to the spirit and the law with respect to Social Security. The money belonged to the people. When the ALP government came into office in 1976, the first thing they do, they wanted to buy the Halcyon Cove Hotel. The cost was $4,230,000. They went to Social Security, that brand new organization, only 3 years old, and they borrowed $4,230,000 from Social Security to buy Halcyon Cove. Now, instead of putting the hotel into the name of Social Security, they put it in the name of the government. And they made an agreement to pay back $38,000 per month over 15 years, saying they're going to pay Social Security 8%. When the UPP government took office in 2004, they examined that loan. The balance was $12,415,145. No money was paid. That loan should have expired in 1992, fully paid back with all the interest paid. Nothing was paid. The second loan that the government borrowed from Social Security was to purchase ZAL TV, now ABS. That loan was for $80,000. They said they're going to pay 8% and pay it back in 3 years. When the UPP took office in 2004, not a penny was paid. The balance then was $259,000. They borrowed money, $200,000, to purchase equipment from CMC. They said they're going to pay it back in 5 years. They're going to pay 9% interest. No money was paid. The balance when UPP took office was $641,000. They borrowed for the Antigua Sugar Industry Corporation $170,000 for 6 months. 28 years after, it's still unpaid. $623,000 was balanced then. They took a big loan for Antigua and Barbuda Development Bank of $17 million. They promised to pay 8.5%. When UPP took office, the loan was the same $17 million, and the interest was also outstanding, not paid. They borrowed money to purchase shares in a company called National Mortgage and Trust Company. Chopper was the borrower, $1 million. When UPP came to office, the full loan not paid, interest outstanding. That was a 10-year loan, not paid. All these loans is what made up the $330 million that the UPP government took and put it into a bond, create an interest payment schedule with respect to paying that bond back. Now, there was a number of payments, number of loans that they borrowed. They said to borrow for a 3-month period. This is happening in 1979. These were to pay salaries, month after month after month. 200,000, 300,000, 200,000, until it came to $1.3 million. No payment was made. This amount was still outstanding in 2005 when they were for a 3-month period in 1979. Hurricane Louis, remember the plywoods? $3 million was borrowed from Social Security. It was supposed to be repaid in 10 years. Not paid. By then, the loan was $4 million. They borrowed money for the airport. They borrowed money for infrastructural development. In this tranche of borrowings, it amounted to $21 million. And when the UPP took office, all was outstanding and unpaid. These are monies that they've taken from the people. These were monies that were supposed to be invested by Social Security so that they can meet the obligations when you're retired, to pay for sickness, to pay for all the coverages that Social Security paid. They took all these monies out. They continued in the 1980s with these borrowings. I will not go through all of them, I will just highlight some. They took $10 million to buy equity again in National Mortgage and Trust Company. They took $10 million to do something with finance, Ministry of Finance, and a building. At the end of this reconciliation in 2005, $330 million was outstanding to Social Security. These were not paid, they were not honored, they were not respected, they were not even correlated. They just had to search for all these loans and put them together and compile the bond. Now, the terms of the bond, when it was made and laid in Parliament, is as follows. $330 million is supposed to be, the government supposed to pay semi-annual interest to Social Security between July 1st, 2010 and July 1st, 2013, for that 3-year period, 1% per annum, payable every 6 months. Between 2013 and 2015, 2% per annum, payable every 6 months. 2015 to 2017, 3% per annum, payable every 6 months. 2017 to 2019, 4% per annum, payable every 6 months. Between 2019 and 2021, 5% per annum, and thereafter 6% per annum. So at this current time, this bond should be earning 6% per annum, and it should have been earning that since 2021. I took a look at the budget for going back all the way to 2015, and where this bond should have been earning 4%, 5%, 6%. The government budget is still recording it at 3%. And that 3% that they record, they have not paid it. And so all of these monies taken out of Social Security is the fracture that broke Social Security. Because I went to the Social Security website in Antigua, and I pulled all of it. This is all that they have in Social Security. I went to St. Kitts Social Security scheme, and I pulled a few things. Just a few things. And what I find in Social Security, their long-term benefits fund have in it $914,294. Let me say that again. $1,213,914,294. That's Sinkers. You heard the Prime Minister say that we have $20 million in his thing? I mean, come on, think about it. Think it's have half the population, half the size, and we have twice as much. But we have very little security for our people. The other thing that frightens me is the population growth of Antigua. Now, the experts, you know, we were due to have a census in 2021. It's 4 years outstanding. And the latest projection that I am reading from the actuaries, we are having reduced fertility rate, we're having less children. We are having less and less net migration, and we are also getting more and more elderly population and less working population, which means that those who are working have to carry the strain for a very much larger group of people retiring, and they would not be able to make it. I think that if we don't do something, if we don't save Social Security, it's going to be busted. That's my contribution.
Thank you very much to the Honorable Sherfield Bowen, and we all are very much appreciative when he presents in his calm, measured demeanor, but very loaded with the facts. Honorable Bowen, I have a question for you based on what you just presented. You said you were addressing the bond just now.
Yes.
And we would have heard in the videos played before we started our discussion, the Prime Minister disparaging the fact that the former Minister of Finance, Honorable Howard Lovell, would have issued that bond to Social Security. My first question to you is, would you say that it was a wise financial move by the former Minister of Finance to issue that $330 million bond to Social Security? Was it weighing Social Security down in any way, as the Prime Minister suggests?
That's a question that can be answered by any 5-year-old.
Oh, okay.
Of course, if you have 48, 50 different loans that are not being paid, that are not even properly recorded, that cannot be found, that no payments were made since 1977, if that was the state of affairs, and then you came in, put all of them together, put them into a recordable instrument, set out a payment schedule, come on, even a child could know that this is more responsible.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sherfield. My second question to you now, sticking with the bond, because that was the main focus of your presentation just now. Now, you said a payment schedule, bringing it to books, that's advisable. Was this interest also advisable? I know you laid out in the MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement, when this bond was put together in 2010, that there was going to be an increased interest rate. We heard the Honorable Minister of Finance, who is also Prime Minister Gaston Brown, say in those videos at the start that this interest rate doesn't make sense and it's burdensome to Social Security. Is interest on this bond also a wise financial move? I have to ask because he said so. No.
Social Security have income from several sources. It ought to have income from several sources. It should have income from contributors, and income from investments, and income from rental. Social Security has a number of properties. Most of them are used by the government. The Treasury Building, buildings on High Street, Long Street, buildings at the Navy base, several properties all over. And the government is the tenant in most of them. These rental incomes, they are not paid. They are not paid. This is taking Social Security money, use it, don't care, and don't pay. These income, as well as the income from the bond, is supposed to supplement the contributions. And don't forget, government don't pay their contributions either. Yeah. So all of these monies that the government is taking from Social Security and depriving the administration of Social Security from doing its statutory duty to take care of the pensioners and the sick and the bereaved and the less fortunate who need it the most, it's the most cruel act that they have performed.
Yes. Thank you very much. So you're saying the interest on the bond is wise. My final question for you, I have to ask these things, listeners and viewers, please bear with me because they were raised by our Prime Minister, by our Minister of Finance. We're here to address these matters.
Yes.
Lastly, in the last video clip we played of the Honorable Prime Minister, he would have said that the interest on the bond, the $330 million bond issued in 2010, is so minuscule and so meaningless and so underperforming. The first part of the question is, what does it mean by the bond is underperforming? Is it not the government's responsibility to pay that bond, meaning it is the Minister of Finance responsibility to make sure that that bond is performing? Question one. Question two, he also said these profits, unverified profits from Jolly Beach of 4 million EC dollars roughly, is more than the interest payments on this $330 million bond. Is that true, yes or no? And you can also answer the first part.
First of all, if the Prime Minister says that the bond is underperforming, that's a confession that he is underperforming, because that is his job. That is his job to perform. And if he comes and he tells you, I have failed to perform, he should also tender his resignation. That's the first question. The second question, I took a look at the board of Social Security over the years. When it was created by the PLM, it had 2 members representing the workers, 2 members representing employers, and another. And under the PLM, that was strictly adhered to. Since Labour Party took office, the board comprised of good old comrades. Comrade Joseph Myers, comrades Jerry Asker, comrades who, when called upon to hand over some money, they say, bring the checkbook. And that is the demise of Social Security. We need, as the law was envisioned, to have representative of the workers, representative of the employers, so they're looking after themselves and not the interests and whims and fancies of the government.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sherfield Bowen. We thank you greatly. And I just want to point out to the listeners and viewers that, for example, take any year at random when you have the reporting of the interest rates payments on this $330 million bond. For example, 2019, you will have $8 million, $8.9 million is interest payment on the bond, EC dollars. You would note that the interest payment alone on the bond is more than the reported profits for Jolly Beach. So clearly, how are you going to disparage the bond that the former Minister of Finance had with its interest payments when the interest alone of the bond is bringing in more revenue into Social Security than this estimated Jolly Beach investment? But anyway, I know you've been waiting for a while to hear from our third and final panelist. And just to remind you, if you have forgotten somehow, I don't know how you could have, but the man before you sitting in the middle is Mr. Everett Christian, and he's an esteemed and accomplished banker. Looking at this CV, I was like, wow. But he's an esteemed and accomplished banker, and he's also the former chairman of the Social Security Board. Mr. Everett Christian is, and also he served in the Ministry of Finance. He is more than qualified. He is more than qualified to speak on the issues tonight. So if you hear people saying we don't have capacity and so on, just please, just chops in their face. Please, Mr. Everett Christian, could you address us this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good night, my good people. I have a very difficult task on my hands, because when you look at the 2 presentations from Brother Lovell and
Brother Sherfield
Bowen, there isn't much for me to add except to say, yeah, I agree. You know, that is the truth. But I will still try to add something to this. If we may go back to the bond, the emphasis so far has been just on the 330 million. But there's another portion for 220 million. And that was to be repaid by way of a swap of assets. And that portion is not interest bearing. And even though that is stipulated in the memorandum of understanding between Social Security and the government, that the bond for $330 million is to be paid in cash, and any asset swap would be against the 220 million. The Bowen administration has disregarded that. And some of the assets that have been transferred since they assumed office were applied against the bond, the interest-bearing bond, rather than the 220 million that was set aside for asset swap. And yet, the Prime Minister has the gall to speak about investments and what have you. So again, let me make the point that was made earlier by Brother Lovell. All Social Security schemes or funds, or whatever term you wish to use, normally accumulate surplus funds in the earlier years of the organization because you're not paying pensions, or it's insignificant as a percentage of the total contribution income. And the expectation is that those funds would be available for investments to generate additional income over and above the contribution income that's paid on a monthly basis. What we experience here is that Social Security was deprived of those funds because every month that the government needed monies to pay salaries, the financial secretary would call the director, say, listen, I need $1 million, $500,000. The cash is sent across, and then they issue either a treasury bill or a bond, a private placement instrument as it's called, where nobody else has an opportunity to bid for purchase of those treasury bills or bonds. It's just something that's done specifically for Social Security, just to give the impression that the whole process was above board, when in fact it was not. As a matter of fact, Social Security, Antigua, like all the Social Security schemes, do periodical actuarial reviews. And we were no exception here in Antigua. And you had a situation where every report that was prepared by the actuary cautioned the government against continuing to deprive the Social Security of its liquidity by taking out these loans on a constant basis. They requested or suggested that they reorganize Social Security. And the reports were submitted, they looked at it and just filed it, and it totally ignored the recommendations. And it was not until the UPP assumed office that we then attempted to put a proper repayment arrangement in place, as well as discontinued granting advances to the government. So my question to the Prime Minister, when he's speaking about the investment portfolio, where are the funds to come from to invest when your administration were the ones sucking it out of Social Security? It's not that he's unaware, but he's so dishonest that he doesn't wish to give credit to anyone. I mean, like, I heard this gentleman speaking about the fact that the UPP administration sat and did nothing about the finances of Social Security. And Social Security was effectively bankrupt in 2010, and it's because of that and the IMF that we had to put this thing on a proper footing when nothing could be further from the truth. He knows, because he was sitting in Parliament, he was a member of Parliament at the time that the agreement was taken to Parliament for approval. And I have a very close friend associated with the Labour Party who told me at the time that they were going to vote against it. Because if they voted in favor of the restructuring, which they know was necessary, it would amount to them acknowledging that they did something wrong. So that it shows clearly that they were not interested in the fund or the beneficiaries of the fund. All they were concerned about was looking good, making it appear as though they were so concerned about protecting the interests of the working class people when nothing could be further from the truth. And when you listen to the numbers that Brother Sherfield gave as to what's happening in St. Kitts with over $1 billion in liquid assets that could be readily converted to cash to meet any shortfall. When we look also at the statement Brother Harold Lovell made, where when the actuaries came in initially, they projected by 2003 that you would have had over $1 billion. St. Kitts showed that that is realistic. And that were it not for the deliberate mismanagement of the funds by successive ALP administrations, we would have had not $1 billion, but possibly $2 billion in reserves. And the fact that today, Social Security is struggling to meet a lot of its commitments. Sorry. Thanks for reminding me about that. And he's speaking about that, the Prime Minister, when you're speaking about the fact that they're now up to date basically with the payments to beneficiaries. And it's not that they don't have money, it's just time for processing because they have over $20 million in cash. What is $20 million? $20 million doesn't even cover 2 months operating expenses for the board. So if you're telling me that all you have in reserves is less than 2 months expenses, what do you expect is going to happen? We are looking down the barrel of a gun. And if the trigger is pulled, Social Security dead. Let me put it that way. You know? But unfortunately, to some people, when they hear 20 million, oh, that's a lot of money. But in the scheme of things, it's nothing for an organization such as Social Security. So, I said, I don't have a whole lot to say because both panelists covered most of the points that I wanted to make. But I think it's unfortunate that we are where we are today, because had we, when I say we, I'm looking at the people, not specifically this party or anything, I'm speaking generally about us as Antiguans and Barbudans. Had we done what we should have done back in the 80s and 90s, Social Security would have been on a much more solid footing than it is today. And when you get to a situation where presently, and let me do something and speak about the composition of the board of directors. As Brother Bowen said, you have representatives, it's a tripartite arrangement. You have representatives from the government, employers, and employees who sit on the board. And they have a responsibility to protect these funds because they're trust funds. This is a point I made time and again, and I'll continue to make it, because it doesn't appear to be registering with the present administration. Because when you have a situation such as the proposal for Jolly Beach, you hear them saying, Cabinet has decided. it is not in Cabinet's position to determine what the board should do with funds that it receives. Those are trust funds. And the directors are there to protect the interests of the trustees, you and I, all the beneficiaries. And therefore, when you know, and remember just a few months ago, they had actually sent a memo to all the statutory bodies, asking them to send surplus funds over to NAMCO, I think it was. And they included Social Security in that. And it's only after a few people like myself made noise about it that they then withdrew the letter. So it shows you that even after all the evidence that has been put before them, everything that they are aware of, they still do not intend to change their approach to Social Security. They think that they have a right to these funds. You know, the money is there, they think it's theirs. And it's not even theirs, because let's look at it. Not only is it trust funds, but the private sector pays more than twice what the government is paying into the Social Security fund. So the private sector has more of an interest to protect for the people who work for them, because they're who keep the fund flowing. So I'm going to piggyback on what Brother Lovell said, and to call on the directors to ensure that they protect the interests of the beneficiaries and not that of the central government. Because if we continue along the lines that we're going right now, it's only a few years before we become, Social Security become bankrupt. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Christian, for your contribution. Greatly appreciated. I just have some questions based on what you just presented.
Fine.
Very, very well. And it'll be very short because you have to get to the audience questions. We know you all are eagerly awaiting. And if I just may, if we can have just a few extra minutes of your time, because we're going a bit. Is that okay with you, audience? Okay, very well, then we'll get into it, because we still have another segment to do. Mr. Christian, you mentioned that the government, they are not the owners of the Social Security scheme. It's trust funds. You also mentioned that the government are not the main, as it is now, the government are not the main contributors into the Social Security scheme.
Exactly.
And what you said is borne out in the performance highlights for various years. For example, I want to ask you a question based on 2018. For the whole financial year, the entire fiscal year of 2018, the central government's contributions into Social Security is being reported as 24 million EC dollars for the entire financial year. Now, as you say, to the layman, that might sound like a lot of money, but based on your service as chairman of the Social Security Board and also an esteemed banker, is this sufficient contribution by the central government of 24 million for a whole fiscal year?
The answer is no. And I think if you look at some other financials, it would show that they should be paying somewhere between $48 and $52 million per year. That is what the contribution should be. So at 27 million, that's only 50% of what they should have contributed to the fund. Mm-hmm. Okay? And this is another issue, that they keep going on the radio to claim that their payments are up to date. Mm-hmm. But they've stopped publishing the information in on the website. Mm-hmm. Because we were able to go and show that they were misinforming the public. Mm-hmm. And a government that claims to be transparent decides to discontinue publication of this information, which otherwise was readily available to all citizens of Antigua and Barbuda.
Yes. And as you said, Mr. Christian, you said a rough estimate of 40-something to 52 million should be normally the contribution of central government to Social Security. I want to highlight to the listeners and viewers that available online at the Social Security our website, you can see for performance highlights. There are only 2 years in this Gaston Brown administration where the rough estimates, the projections for central government contributions were met. Only 2 years, 2024 and 2023. There's no other years in over a decade of Gaston Brown being the Prime Minister of this country that central government has met their projected contributions. So when they're saying, as Mr. Christian, that they're up to date, that's clearly false.
False.
All right. We want to move over to questions from the audience. And we just want to remind you that you can send your questions via our Facebook page. You can also send your questions, well, ask your questions in person to this mic right here, to my right, which will be your left for those of you who can't see what I'm pointing at. So if you have any questions, please feel free to come forward and ask some questions as it pertains to the social security matter that we're discussing. We're not going to take any other questions outside the topic. We have a limited amount of time. So just please feel free to come forward and ask, or send your questions to the Facebook page. Yes, so while we wait for you to muster up the courage to ask your questions in person, we have some questions from the WhatsApp board. Oh, you have a question? The mic, I don't believe the mic is on. Tap on the mic to see if, no, it's not on. The mic, check on the mic to see the switch.
Okay, so it'll be on now. Yes, good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I'm Johnson Miller, and I must make it known that I'm a government worker. Now, I understand that Mr. Brown saying that he does not pay for government. Okay, you know, they doesn't pay for government workers. So I would like to know now, if, as a government worker, if my money, let's say, when I reach on, you know, the retirement age, if there is anything for me, if I'm going to get anything. Now, Mr. Christian, you said something there that I'm asking. You say that if we had do what we were supposed to do in the 80s, I would like you to tell me what is that thing that you're talking about. And something else now. I would like to know what we as a people can do to stop the board and that madman, Gaston Brown. I would like to know what we can do to stop him, because the way I see things going in this country, you know, it's just a matter of time for the people might, you know, people will be suffering in this country because when you cannot get your money to, like for instance, when Social Security, your time for you to get your money and you cannot get it, what's going to happen to you? Thank you. That's all for now.
Just before you go. Thank you so much for your question. Just a reminder, we want to limit you to one question per person. Please, one question per person, and on the topic of Social Security. Mr.
Yes, my answer to that is, and Brother Lovell touched on that as well in his presentation, is that the directors must focus on their real responsibilities, which is to the beneficiaries and not to the government.
Yes.
And if they fail to do that, then I think it is for citizens to take action against them. Through the courts I'm talking about.
Against the board.
Against the board members, if they fail to live up to their fiduciary responsibilities.
Very well. Thank you very much. Very, very well answered. We have another question from the floor. I think she looks very familiar to most of us, if not all.
Good night, everybody. With what has happened over the weekend with the United States striking Iran, what are the implications for those hostile activities that could follow for tourism sector as an industry that contributes to Social Security? And is this a good time to be building a hotel where the tourism industry is at risk? Thanks.
And any one of you can answer.
What can happen with respect to escalation of war? We can have reversal in tourism growth. We can have various other problems with respect to our relationship with the United States and travel and other things, you ought to be a very careful person, would think clearly and carefully about investment into a sector where there are uncertainties. And I, for one, would not want to be thinking of expanding anything in leisure at a time when the United States seems to be teetering on war, when the United States is our principal supplier of tourism. So that will be a very prudent factor for me to take into consideration with respect to that investment.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Bowen. We have another question from the floor. I'll just tap it to see if it's on. Flip the switch.
Good evening. My name is Sylvester Brown. This question, maybe Mr. Christian may be in a position to answer it. What I want to know is, in the composition of the board, I haven't had a chance to look at the act. I think it's the Honorable Harold Lovell referred to this Clause 13, the Investment Committee, for example. Because I'm sure there are rules and regulations as to how the money would be handled in there. But would you be able to tell me offhand if over the years they have abided by the basic investment, which means short-term bonds and government investment that would be able to carry the scheme? Has any of that been done at all, or is there a free-for-all and the investments are not protected by the Act?
Simple answer to that is that the investment committee has not functioned forever. The reason is that there are no funds to invest. So what you're going to hold a meeting for? And that is because of what was taking place under successive ALP administrations, where, as I said, they just suck the money out of Social Security every month. And you attempt to keep some funds in reserve to cover expenses, and so you're not going to tie those up in treasury bills or bonds, because you need to be very liquid, at least to meet some of those commitments. So really, the investment committee hasn't functioned, but the reason for that is I said that $550 million that was sucked out of Social Security is the reason for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Christian, for that answer. And we have another distinguished gentleman ready to ask a question.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am Wayne Imad, or UPP Trini. My question is to Professor Lovell. In the agreement with Barrett for the hotel that Social Security is going to buy, there were a clause where I believe it said that if the government did not honor the first refusal to Elite Resorts or Barrett, that we had to pay something like $5 million penalty. Or if the contract was terminated, we would have to pay another penalty. I don't know if you remember seeing that. It was in the papers.
It was in the
Thank
papers. I've never actually seen the agreement. But I understand the point that you're making, that they would have been given the right of first refusal. But Mr. Barrett is now dead, so we're not sure exactly what's going to happen. And the agreement hasn't been terminated. As I understand it, it terminates automatically next year. So we'll have to see what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Emmanuel Peters, caretaker, St. John's Roseau. Very informative panel. There's a lot we learned tonight, and there's a question and a concern. What we are discussing tonight, and it fails, or it is already failed, do the panel predict that the age of pension is going to go up? One. And also as well, I think we need to expand a little bit more on the area of appealing to the younger generation, letting them, although they may be far from the age of pension, letting them understand that the burden that they may have to carry, taking care of their parents, their loved ones, for much longer time if the age of pension expands. Thank you.
With the reforms that took place over the last few years, it may not, and I say may not, I'm being cautious how I so I'm not going to say it will not. It may not be necessary to adjust the pensionable age again. You may recall that when Social Security was established back in 1972-73, the pensionable age was 60. And the scheme was able to function fairly effectively without adjusting the pensionable age for, what, it was like 40 years? Like about 40 years. So that with the additional 5 years that has been put on, which now takes the pensionable age to 65, I don't see there will be a need to change that in the short term. As I said, there are a lot of things that could change that. For instance, if we make the mistake of keeping the Labour Party in power so that they're in a position to continue raiding the funds, then that could change. So I cannot sit here and tell you that, look, we need to look at this in 5 years or 10 years. It depends. There are a lot of other variables that we'd have to look at.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Christian, for that answer. And we will take our last question from the floor. Go ahead.
Good evening. Just 2 points of concern, though. Social Security is asked to put in $75 million into a project. We don't have an idea who the shareholders, the other shareholders in that project are. And if it is possible that we're putting our money into something that we do not agree to, what could we say about that relationship? Thanks.
Let me take that. Now, there are two things here. I'm not certain that Social Security is going to be injecting 75 million. Because what really happens is that almost every day you listen to the radio, and I make it a decision to listen to Point FM just to hear for myself what's happening rather than depending on third party. And almost every time I listen, the goalpost shift. Okay, so it started, if you can recall, with them saying they're injecting 75 million, which Social Security would then use to develop the property. It transpires that that was never the intention, really. It was just an asset swap. But they expected that Social Security would then find the funds to renovate and improve the property. And when the whole issue of profitability of the property came up, they changed the goalpost again and spoke about doing rooms for sale under the CIP. So it keeps shifting from day to day. And one of the things is that no one can show me that they've undertaken a study, that they have projections, a feasibility study, or any such thing to show exactly what it is that's planned, what the cost is going to be, and how it's going to be funded. And without that, I don't know really how to respond to you otherwise, because I said the goalposts keep shifting.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Christian. I just want to ask a question off of the WhatsApp board. I know we're managing the time, and so we'll take, that was the last question from the in-person persons here, the people here.
How about two people standing here?
Oh, you have a question? Oh, okay, very well. I didn't see, because you weren't at the mic there. My apologies. A question from the board. It says, the WhatsApp board, with the stacks of irrefutable evidence that fraudulent actions have been and are still being engaged in by the current ABLP administration, are there criminal charges that can be brought against the current Gaston Brown administration? I would assume one of the legal counsels, and especially one specializing in criminal law.
Well, I am criminal defense. Matters of that needs thorough investigation, and it needs the proper authorities to ensure that the elements of the crime can be proven in court.
All right, very well. We have a question in person here.
Hello, Blashford Wilkins. My question is very short. Over the last 25 years, how many times has Jolly Beach changed ownership?
That's more Mr. Lovell.
I believe I would say there was the Caribbean Hotel Management, there was the ABI group, and then there was a Canadian group who were involved, and then the Elite Starfish, and then the Elite Island group. So I think on 4 different occasions, it has changed, 4 or 5, it has changed management.
That we know.
That we know, yes.
Yeah.
But I understand the point you're making.
Yes. All right, we have another question from the floor.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
Justin Simon, otherwise known as Russ Joss. I'm a bald-head Rasta. Well, let me first of all say thanks to the panelists. I think they've done a good job. And it's my first time listening to the moderator here, who is now the UPP communications officer, am I right?
I have not been appointed.
Oh, well, you will soon be. Come out, and you've also done a very good job in respect of that. Now, my concern... My concern is in respect of disclosure. Mr. Lovell, you did mention that there is a board, but there is also an investment committee. I think we need to know who the members of the board are and who the members of the investment committee are. So at least we have that in our minds. When we see them, we will think, oh, it's you. That is important. And I don't think that is something that we need to hide or run away from, because it's a public duty that they're performing. But more importantly, in 2016, not too sure if you have that act with you, there was an amendment of Section 14 of the Social Security Act. And it reads, the Principal Act is amended in Section 14 by repealing subsection 2 and substituting the following. Monies in the fund. Hold on a while, am I getting it right now? 1 second there, because you know I'm an old star when it comes to those AI situations and technical. But it says, the investment of money to the fund, not otherwise required, shall be made by the director in accordance with the directions of the investment committee and the investment policy statement and ratified by the cabinet. So it's not a matter that the cabinet or the PM should be coming out to say what Social Security should be doing, but it really should come from the committee after an assessment of the investment policy statement. So I need you to expand on that and let us know whether anything like this has actually happened. Thank you.
If I go, and thank you for that, this bears out the point that we've been making, that the standard of governance has been extremely weak, that we have decisions being taken, decisions being made by the cabinet where it is not their call to make those decisions. And we've said over and over again in the forum here tonight that the board and the investment committee are the ones who are empowered by the act to make all such decisions. In my presentation, I asked, has the board seen any feasibility study? Has the board seen any valuation? Has the board seen the financial statements of the current operator to know what the true state of affairs actually is? My understanding is that they have seen none of those things, and therefore, for any decision to be taken, before those considerations have been taken into account, and where the board has not had an opportunity to make an informed decision, then any such decision which would have been taken outside of their remit, where it is not really their decision, I'm saying to the board members, be very careful, because any decision that they make where they have not properly applied their minds to the decision, but rather have had the decision handed to them, then they would have failed in their responsibility. Because it is their responsibility, as you quite rightly pointed out, to do what we call today proper due diligence. Before you make any serious investment decision, you must do your due diligence. Has the board done sufficient due diligence? When we have already been told by the government spokesman, Mr. Morris Merchant, what the board will do before the board has even considered it. So I think the board is skating on thin ice.
Names of the board?
Yeah,
You have it?
They're available online.
They're available online.
On the
They're available online.
Antigua and Barbuda Social Security website, you would see the name of the board members listed there. I just want to ask a question again from the WhatsApp board to the panelists, to keep them engaged. This person asks, Caribbean governments who are not aviation experts caused the demise of the private entity Liat 1974 Limited. Would international hotel chains like Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, Ritz-Carlton, or even Sandals Beaches be a better fit for the takeover of this Jolly Beach resort?
Well, again, it comes to who is your operator and what are the terms on which they're going to operate it. We have been told, and as Everett was pointing out, the story keeps shifting. And when I said that the whole process has been handled in a very sloppy way, I'm very serious about that. That this is a government dealing with a statutory body, and we have not seen anything in writing up to now. I mean, everybody knows if a man is selling a Vitz or selling a chattel house, he wants something in writing, put something in writing, let's see how it goes. And here it is, they're talking about a major investment, and there's nothing in writing. Every time they speak, they change the tune. This is wholly unacceptable. And what makes it worse, it's not even their call. They're not in a position to be making these decisions. Those are decisions to be made by the board. So all in all, it is a terrible state of governance, very low level of management decision making. And we ought to call them out on this, because we the people deserve much better than what we're currently getting.
Yes. Thank you very much, Honorable Harold Lovell. We're going to keep you just for a few more minutes. We have one last segment to address. Oh, okay. We have another question from the floor.
The first part of the question was answered.
No, it's on. On.
Okay.
Good.
All right. The first part of my question was answered, but the second part of the question was, how a conversation like this, Social Security, which is heavily retirement conversation, partially, but most heavily towards that, how does that appeal to my 18-year-old son, letting him realize that if daddy cannot make it to the age of 60 or 65 retirement, the burden that he will have to carry to assist, hopefully, he's good enough at that point in time to look after his parents. Because then we have to make sure that the younger generations realize this conversation, although they're not ready or nowhere close to that age of retirement, how it is going to affect them looking after their parents, their sibling, or a guardian, or somebody that they care for. Thank you.
I would say that we need to begin educating our children from young to understand that retirement planning is not something that should start at age 50 or 60. It should start at age 18, 16, 18, once you enter the workforce. But that is not really the culture, unfortunately. Because Social Security is a pay-as-you-go type operation, which you identified correctly, that people entering the workforce today are paying the pensions for someone who has exited the workforce effectively. And with the reduction in our birth rate, which Bowen touched on in his presentation, this could become acute within a few years. So that we need to get through to our children that they need to begin planning, because that way they'll be in a better position to take care of their parents and even themselves when their day comes.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Christian. And if there are no further questions from the floor?
Yes. No, I didn't mention that because that's insignificant in the scheme of things. Yes, but point well taken.
All right, thank you so much, audience, for your questions, those who are here in person and those who are online, and thank you again to the panelists for answering the questions. We'll just touch in less than 30 minutes thereabouts, because I believe that the panelists can agree that the second segment is quite an open and shut case in terms of its legality and its rightness, if you will. So the second part of our discussion tonight, we'll be talking about some of the findings from the Director of Audit in his different reports. And the Director of Audit, Mr. Dean Evanson, he's reporting to the nation that unusually there's some illegal activity going on by our Minister of Finance, the Honorable Gaston Brown, to the fact that after the budget has been passed, there is supplementary appropriations or provisions. So that's money that is spent additional to what is already spent in the budget too, or what is appropriated for in the budget. And our Director of Audit is saying there's some illegal activity going on there. But I hand it over to our panel, first and foremost, the Honorable Sherfield Bowen, to address these concerns raised by our Director of Audit. Honorable Bowen? Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Now, we have the auditor's report for the year 2019.
Mike. No, pull it closer. Charlton, pull it.
We have the Director of Audit's report for 2019, 2018, and 2017. I'm going to just briefly go through some of the things that he found. First of all, in audit, there are 4 types of opinions. When an auditor audits your book, they are going to give an opinion about your books. And there are 4 basic types. One is called the unqualified opinion, which means that your books are clean, it presents fairly in all material aspects, the statements of the income and the earnings and the assets and liability of the company. That's an unqualified opinion. And that's what companies strive for. The second opinion is a qualified opinion, which means that save and accept some qualified aspect, your account is fair. So it is not fully clean. This thing needs to be taken care of. The third opinion is called an adverse opinion, which means that your book does not present clearly what you're saying. Too much problems, I cannot say it presents fairly. And the fourth opinion is called a disclaimer, where they're not only going to give, they're not even giving you an opinion. It is so bad. Now comes the auditor's opinion for the government of Antigua and Barbuda. And the 2019 opinion, the auditors say, we did not find the audit evidence present fairly this statement. An adverse opinion. The government presentation of the accounting is not fair. Here are the things the auditors found. When they checked the revenue in the accounts and the actual revenue collected, $21 million cannot be accounted for. Further, the amounts approved by the budget for the year 2019 and the actual expenditure, $214 million spent, was not approved. $214 million spent, not approved. This is unlawful spending because all expenditure from the consolidated funds must be approved by Parliament. And the auditor found $240 million spent, not approved. What the auditor also found is that a budget can be passed today where the public is being advised these are the amounts of money allocated to each ministry to be spent. And the next day, the Minister of Finance spent other monies other than what approved yesterday. So he knew or should have known that these hundreds of millions of dollars are going to be spent, but they were not in the budget. And whatever is in the budget was not actually spent, but the monies were spent for a purpose that was not approved. In 2018, the situation is basically the same. The opinion, we did not find the audit evidence present fairly the final statement of the government. Adverse opinion. What they found? $225 million in supplementary appropriation not approved by Parliament. $9 million, the difference between the reported collections and the actual collections. Each and every year in the audit report are the same type of findings. 2017, the opinion, we did not find that the audit evidence present fairly the financial position of the government of Antigua and Barbuda. Supplemental spending not approved by Parliament, $291 million. The difference between the actual collection and the reported collection, $128 million, 2017. Now, I was only able to find one financial statement, this one for Social Security, one. The auditor, KPMG, opinion, we are unable to determine whether the financial statement presents fairly. Presents fairly. I compare, I have 3 audited statements for St. Kitts Social Security, auditor's opinion. In our opinion, we find the statement presents fairly in all material respect the financial position of the board. No qualifications. The next year, different auditing firm, this one is called Panelka Foster. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statement presents fairly in all material respect, clean. Every time they're clean. Antigua and Barbuda have 28 statutory corporations. Only 7 of them in the last 10 years have presented unqualified financial reports. And I want to give these statutory bodies a big up. Antigua and Barbuda Airport Authority, big up. Antigua and Barbuda Development of Marine Services and Merchant Shipping, good. Antigua and Barbuda Tourism Authority, good. Antigua and Barbuda Public Utilities Authority, good. ONDCP, good. PDV, Carib, Antigua, good. And State Insurance. All the others, some of them have, listen to this, Antigua and Barbuda Development Bank, a bank, have none whatsoever. We have the Medical Council, none. National Parks, none. Social Security Board of Control, none. Antigua Carnival Committee, none. Board of Education, none. Chopper, none. Development Control Authority, nada. FSRC, can you remember that? Nothing. Well, Liat is gone now, nothing, and that's why he's gone too. Yep. So this is the state of play with your money. National Solid Waste, the last time was 2006 under the great leadership of the United Progressive Party. Medical benefits, where are you? Medical benefits, last time 2013 UPP KPMG. That's the state of play.
Thank you so much, Honorable Sherfield Bowen. Now, based on what the Honorable just said, we know in his calm, measured, expert delivery, he would have read some very shocking statements there. I want us to understand that it is a constitutional power of the Director of Audit, enshrined in Section 97 of the Constitution of Antigua and Barbuda, that the Director of Audit has the power to kick in the door of any ministry or department or statutory body. Once they're within the government, under the control of the government, within the government sector, the Director of Audit has the power, according to the Constitution of Antigua and Barbuda, to get their financial statements, to look at their books, to get to look at the audited statements, to ensure that everything, as the Honorable said, would be fairly presented and represented. We are hearing that out of 27,
yes,
28 statutory bodies, only 7 presented reports. And we're also hearing that Social Security has presented how many?
0.
You're sure, Honorable Sherfield?
Well, somebody else can take a look, because, you know, I don't have plenty
No,
of
I took a look before. I know it's 0 too. And we're also aware that the current chairman of the Social Security Board is sitting in our audience this evening. But I'm just saying that what we're saying is that we want to ask for these documents. I'm bringing this up because the Office of the Leader Opposition many times has written to the Social Security Board requesting financial information. The Director of Audit has written requesting financial information regarding these bodies. We have been denied in the case of the Director of Audit. He's mentioned that there's none. And we have been denied in the Office of the Leader Opposition, who is also the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. Now, we here in Antigua and Barbuda, how much longer are we going to sit back and keep quiet about these things? Your money, you hear about $550 million over a period of about 28 years. You hear about all these figures that have been taken out of your trust funds, of your taxpayers' money. There's no accounting, there's no transparency. How much longer will we sit back and accept this? That is the point. And where we have people who have the power and authority to change what needs to be changed, The information is public. We know who they are. We have to hold them accountable. As the Honorable Harold Lovell said, if it comes to the fact where the board is not performing, you have to be careful because there might be legal action taken against you. We have to do our job. We can't just be good comrades and say, yes, sir, where's the checkbook? We have to be transparent and accountable in the affairs of Antigua and Barbuda, our social security, medical benefits, education levy, and so on and so on. It's our money. We deserve better. So, having said that, if I don't see a line by the mic, is that an indication that we are satisfied or we have questions from the audience? I see somebody making their way. Is that to the mic? Yes. Okay, we have a question from the audience.
Good evening, all, for the second time. I just want to understand, am I right in saying that the Public Accounts Committee, which is established by the Constitution, and which provides for the leader of the opposition to be the chair and other members of government to be part and parcel of the committee, it is their duty to address those various public accounts?
Yes.
Yes, you say yes?
Yes, yes.
So that is the reason why the government members make sure that they are not present at the meeting.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question and for the answer. All right, it's been a long evening. We thank you so much for your indulgence. Before we leave, we just really have to say thank you to our esteemed panelists, the Honorable Harold Lovell, former Minister of Finance and Economy, attorney at law, and also visiting professor at the University of Toronto. We want to thank Mr. Everett Christian, an esteemed banker here in Antigua and Barbuda. He's the former chairman of the Social Security Board. He's the former project manager of Revenue Administration Reform for the government of Antigua and Barbuda within the Ministry of Finance. He's also the former country manager for the Antigua and Barbuda Investment Bank. He's also the former corporate relations manager at the First Caribbean International Bank. And finally, but not least, or last but not least, we want to thank the Honorable Sherfield Bowen, the Member of Parliament for St. Philip South. He's also an attorney at law specializing in criminal law, and we heard it's defense guy. He's also a legal specialist on taxation matters, banking law, and international practice, and he's also a trained and qualified certified public accountant in the state of Maryland since 1994. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you again.
Hello. I would like, on behalf of the panel, not only to thank you, the audience, as was done.
Yes.
I would like to thank our outstanding moderator, who did a very good job, not only tonight in moderating this session, but really being the mover and shaker of this event and making sure that it was on the road. Well done, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the words of encouragement, Brother Harold.
And the key researcher.
Thank you very much. And we want to thank those individuals behind the scenes who consistently put in the time and effort to make the venue available. Thank you to the Antigua and Barbuda Workers Union. Thank you to the Events Officer of the United Progressive Party. Thank you to the Mobilization Officer of the United Progressive Party. Events Officer, Mr. Kurt Van Kelt, Events Mobilization Officer, Brother George Werner. And we thank you to our streamer here this evening, Mr. Akeem. And we also want to thank Brother Emmanuel Peters for his assistance as well, too, in making sure the event came off. And we want to thank Kim's K's Nursery. My apology, tongue twister for me there. Brother Cam Warner, thank you so much for making your plans available. And everyone else who made this possible. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you to the audience.
This land is crying. This land is crying. This land is crying. Lord, a breath of new air This land is crying, Lord, we've had enough. Bad governance, bad leaders, it's been so rough. The land is crying, Lord, we've had enough. Bad governance, bad leaders, it's been so rough. They sell our future, turn a blind eye.